Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Sincy here from Bulwark, responsible for Mimecast product renewals and upsells. Thank you all for joining the webinar, Mimecast Why Work Protected, Manage Risk, Not Technology. This webinar will be now taken up by Lara, Mimecast Partner Manager.
And welcome to everyone who joined today. This joint webinar with Bulwark. First of all, I would like to thank Bulwark and our partners for organizing this session. And I really hope you make the best out of it. So I'm just going to walk you briefly through what's going to be presented today. We have some team members from Mimecast, from our business development team, as well as our sales engineering team. And they will be talking you through the new Mimecast point of view. I'll go into a few more details in the next slide on what that exactly means, and definitely Marcel will be going into more details as well in terms of the new brand messaging and what that entails. And then Gigi is going to be talking you through the importance of AI and cybersecurity and how that's changing the whole approach and why is it important to acquire a new mindset while approaching cybersecurity. And Sujata from our sales engineering team will be discussing the importance of DMARC and the role it plays in your brand protection. At the end, we will just wrap up with the Bulwark team and our team, and we will open the floor for some Q&A. There was one more slide that I wanted to share, but I'm not sure for some reason. It's just slides are not moving in a slideshow. In all cases, I'm just going to walk you through that. Basically, Mimecast a few weeks ago was a participant in the Black Hat event in Las Vegas in August. And during that conference or event, we had some really, really exciting launches that were happening, that were built around the work protected, a new platform, and as well as a new method of deployment. Now, as you know, email and collaboration technologies are essential and compelling for us today, and we are more dependent on them than ever before. This means cloud services like Office 365 and Google Workspace are our work surface, but also represent our risk surface. Work protected is our new brand promise and the point of view that Marcel's going to walk you through that. And we will be sharing with you the evolving story and the value that we provide to you as customers. Now, by understanding communications, we harness the richest source of intelligence available. We learn about your people, how they behave, and we understand how they use your data and enable you to keep your data moving, as well as safe and compliant. This is what the new platform, labeled as the X1 platform, entails as an evolution to our well-known MimOS. So far, we've spoken about the new work protected, the point of view, the X1 platform, the new launch, and finally, Mimecast is also excited to be launching Email Security Express, a new deployment option built on the X1 platform. It competes in the gateway-less space while providing the same level of granularity and security that Mimecast is known for. Now, it's not yet available for this region. It will be available next year, but as of November, it will be available for the UK and the US region. This is a very important time in the Mimecast journey. The success of the Express go-to-market product launch and our new brand promise is a key milestone in our strategic growth. And we are very, very excited to be sharing this with you. I hope you take the best out of this session. And, as again mentioned, please make sure it's as interactive as possible. Without further ado, I will hand over to Marcel to kickstart the first session. Over to you, Marcel.
Cheers. Thanks, Laura. I hope everyone can hear me fine. So like Laura said, I'll be taking you guys through the new Mimecast point of view. Basically just talking about the new brand promise Mimecast is making to our customers. And just talking about sort of the risk that we see today and how we perceive that as organizations in sort of today's world. And as you all know, at Mimecast, we're really trying to help organizations work protected by providing really some of the industry's most advanced email and collaboration security. And we're very proud to be the #1 cybersecurity companion to Microsoft Office 365 as well as Google Workspace. But now more than ever, I think email and collaboration is where work happens, and we all know this and we all feel this in our day-to-day works, whether that be sending out emails, being on Slack, being on Microsoft Teams. It's become a very dependent sort of structure on that. It's the key way by which we sort of connect our communications. It's the key way in which we connect our people, our employees, our customers, our partners. And in a sense, it's also really the key way by which we connect our data. And a lot of our organizational data resides within these collaboration tools that we use today. So as you know, email and collaboration suites are found within Microsoft as well as Google Workspace. And like I said, they are fundamentally where work happens today. Hence, this has really become our primary sort of work surface. However, the result is that our work surface generally harbors the greatest concentration of risks. And because of all of the data they hold, the productivity suites, etc., are as compelling to malicious actors as they are to the organizations like ourselves that rely upon those systems. And I suppose really the fundamental question that yourselves, IT teams, security professionals, security teams, etc., need to ask themselves is sort of how has that work surface become really the primary attack surface in today's world? And the way you can sort of start addressing that is to look at 3 core risks or 3 core attack vectors that have emerged. The first one of that being malicious actors, where we find these hackers being highly determined, they're well-resourced, they often bounce between email and collaboration platforms in what we see as very sophisticated attacks. In general, in today's world, they target Microsoft Office 365 as well as Google. And the reason for that being is it just presents the most people to phish. There's more ways to gain access to those 2 sites. And because a lot of organizations use that, according to Gartner, there's even more data to steal within those two platforms. Hence, the concentrated risk of malicious attack is there. The second sort of attack vector, the risk that we look at as a core vector is our people and sort of employee error around that. And really, it's our fundamental sort of susceptibility to being fooled, to being duped, to fall victim. And not just by silly attacks, but due to increasingly complex phishing attacks. In our new world also, we try to respond faster. We click on links. We open and close files across multiple platforms. I mean, I, for one, sometimes have WhatsApp web open, then I have Slack, then I have working on Teams with the call, then I need to respond to emails, then I'm searching something online for my wife that I need immediate information for, So really, in the new world, we tend to respond faster and we tend to trust by default. And unfortunately, our adversaries know this and they actually count on that. And then lastly is technology failability, the failability of technology. And we all know this, no tool is 100%. Not even Apple. You can see a month ago, Apple had issues with their operating system where a lot of people thought, well, these guys are untouchable. This happened. No tool is 100%. And while technologies can fail without malicious intent, attacks are built to target vulnerabilities in the very technologies that we trust today, the very technologies that we use for collaboration within organizations. But something that is very, very clear, and according to the Verizon DBIR report of 2021, one attack vector is clear, and that's that 91% of breaches still start with email. And that's very evident. We see the impact of this literally everywhere. You can just open up a news site or type into Google or whatever search engine you're using, that nearly every day in the headlines, front page news, splashed across media outlets, we see some sort of malicious attacker with ransomware or whatever it might be, locking down the data or stealing data. We see employee error with employees falling victim to impersonation or business compromise or man-in-the-middle attacks. And then we see things like technology failability in the likes of a 365 outage or a system downage on other collaboration tools that we use as organizations today. And if we look at sort of an illustration of how attackers sort of play upon and target the unique intersections between our organization's communication channels, the people who use them, and then actually the underlying data that fuels the businesses, it's very interesting to see that these attacks are multi-staged, but often they're perpetrated by multiple actors as well. And the attacks I'm talking about are things like impersonation and supply chain compromise, where they impersonate a personal or a domain, a personal name or domain. User credential theft. We've all seen those Office 365 emails asking you to click on a link to change your password. Advanced persistent threats. These are those specialized phishing attempts directed directly at organizations that we see all too often. And then the scary one for a lot of organizations is ransomware and data loss, where the attackers try to exfiltrate your data and deploy ransomware within your organizations. And because of all of this concentrated risk in an area which organizations have now become very dependent on, when I talk about the communication tools, it becomes extremely fundamental to protect your people, to protect your communications, and to protect your data. So what's happened really is, how is the cybersecurity industry sort of responded? And what we've seen is, with the ever-growing sort of array of disconnected point solutions that are designed to address a singular part of the problem only. And as a result, it increases or gives you sort of a massive complexity of security for security teams. There's gaps in protections, there's slower response times, unmanageable sort of staffing and training requirements around that. And really, in short, security teams are spending a lot more time actually managing technology than what they are trying to manage risk. And what that does really is, it leads to a proliferation of point products from an equal number of vendors, which can lead to a unique set of problems. It's problems like security teams that lack a comprehensive sort of view of security because they can only articulate the multiple perspectives from an individual product. Products don't communicate with one another. Teams need to be trained on a host of different tools and platforms, which a lot of times actually entails additional cost, and then what I find from our customers almost daily is just trying to manage sort of multiple vendors, multiple contracts, multiple subscription licenses becomes basically a full-time job. And putting that with all of the sort of IT day-to-day stuff that you need to do and manage, you have to try and manage that with procurement, which we all know sometimes becomes a bit difficult. It does really become a job on its own. So really what's happening is, security teams on average are spending more time managing technology than actual risk. And as a result, they're spending less time thinking strategically about how to protect their organizations. And I speak to a lot of security leaders, and the first time this hits home for a lot of them is when they call to like a board of directors meeting and they need to communicate a risk strategy, for instance, or they need to justify a security budget, or they need to define an integrated approach to security, for instance. A lot of the times these leaders struggle to provide a holistic strategy because they can only articulate the multifaceted perspectives offered by all of these multiple tools sort of that they're using today. And because these individual tools don't talk to each other, the gaps between them can be exploited. And attackers have evolved to become more agile, hyper-specialized, and syndicated to jump into those little gaps. And really, the hard reality is that our risk vectors are compounded by the complexity that we have by having all of these point solutions together. So while attempting to address the risks with numerous point solutions, the compounding complexity of doing so is actually creating new risks for us as IT security professionals. So remembering our organizational goal I mentioned in the beginning is to work protected. How do you comprehensively address these risks that I mentioned earlier without suffering from the actual complexity of doing so? And how do you make sure that you spend your time managing the actual risk that you have in the organization and not the technology that you deploy to try and manage that risk. So for Mimecast, the strategic question we focus on is how can we work protected and bring down the risk without creating unnecessary complexity for our customers. And that's really where the Mimecast system comes into play. Our system starts with, I would say, the foundation of understanding your communications and their patterns, the people who communicate and their behaviors as they engage with their work, with the outside world. And we enable you to keep your data moving and safe, even when at rest. And for me, if you look at the Mimecast system, there are really three concepts that are important to work protected. The first is, I would say, the platform, the new X1 platform, which provides efficacy, it provides scale, and it provides telemetry across the services. Secondly comes in the mesh, right, which is our Mimecast extensible security hooks, right, which is responsible for the extensibility of the platform and assists organizations like yourselves that are looking to build a more comprehensive cybersecurity architecture with some of the other investments that you've made. And lastly, an integrated suite of products which can take the advantage of the benefits of the organizations that use them. And if we delve down a little bit deeper into those three sort of core values, and we look at firstly the Mimecast X1 platform, it's built upon three core innovations. First is the X1 precision detection, which is really our security efficacy layer that's driven by the best of breed detection technologies that's been perfected with us over the last 20 years. It's social graphing to understand the context of the communications, AI and ML to identify and block never seen before threats as well. Then we look at the X1 service fabric, secondly, which governs our cloud services. It offers scale, it offers granularity, and all of the learnings that is fueled by 43,000 plus organizations that use Mimecast, and also serves to track the identity of those users as they migrate between email and collaboration suites, so between email and Slack and email and Teams, etc. And lastly is the X1 data analytics, which fuels our threat intelligence and response, which provides critical context and telemetry for the threat researchers within the MSOC, as well as further hardening of the system as it actually learns not only your environment, but the environment of all organizations using the X1 platform. Then secondly comes in our notion of mesh. Again, mesh is an acronym for Mimecast Extensible Security Hooks. It's also the same word that Gartner actually uses to describe cybersecurity system of systems that allow multidisciplinary products to work in tandem. For example, let me give you an example, is the ability to connect to other security investments like an endpoint, as in a CrowdStrike, for instance, a firewall, a SIM, something that we're pushing a lot from Mimecast side is XDR, CASB, and even SOAR platforms, for instance. So really extending the functionality that you find in Mimecast and your other platforms to bring in all of the investment that you've made from a cybersecurity standpoint. And then on top of that, as I mentioned earlier, we have our suite of fully integrated solutions that protect communications, they protect people, and they protect data. All of this while simultaneously reducing the complexity and the risk for our customers. All the additional functionality serves really to enhance your security maturity and really does create a trusted bond across these different systems. And it's really with this platform strategy, I would say, that Mimecast can serve as a system of systems that ensures your communications are trusted, it ensures that your people are savvy, and that your data is in fact kept safe. Now, the Mimecast system is designed to keep sort of the key intersection of communications, people, and data secure, as I mentioned earlier. The Mimecast product suite means that you have sort of you don't have to compromise between security or simplicity, all right? So though all of these products are very powerful on their own, the solutions do become your security X factor when they are deployed together, right? It allows you to control risk. It allows you to optimize resources and focus on what matters most to your organization. It keeps your organization secure by not managing just the technology, actually, and thereby enabling your communications to be trusted, your people to become savvy, and your data to actually remain safe. And in doing so, we actually help organizations work protected by serving as the eyes and the ears of their evolving security posture. Thank you, guys. I will hand over to Gigi now. Please remember, if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to add them in the chat box. We'll get to them at the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcel. I hope you're able to see my screen now. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Pleasure to meet you all, and thanks for joining in. So without further ado, we'll dive into the topic, which is artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. The need for a new mindset. With this, I would like to introduce you to an innovative product, which is CyberGraph, which we recently launched, which is designed to protect organizations from sophisticated, highly targeted email threats. So I want to walk you through an example of an attacker creating a targeted business email compromise attack to tempt the recipient to transfer the money to an account under the attacker's control. So cybersecurity professionals will recognize this as the first 3 stages of the cyber kill chain process, which is essentially the reconnaissance, weaponization, and the delivery stages. So essentially, these stages are completed to land the email in the target's inbox. Also, I would like to start explaining what trackers are and how it is used in modern cybersecurity attacks that we are seeing. So email trackers that you see over here are in common used by MarTech platforms like Market2 or SalesLoft to help the sender understand whether the recipient has opened a particular email and hence they gauge their interest level. So they have a far more nefarious use these days by cyber criminals during the reconnaissance phase of the attack. So what they do is they send across emails with trackers embedded in it. So trackers, when they're embedded into an email, what happens is that the moment you open that particular email, they pull information from a remote server. Like, for example, a single pixel graphic can be downloaded that is visible to a human eye. And also the act of downloading it means that the device IP address and also the location can be discovered by the attacker. And also they get to know whether this might be an old version, OS version that contains the vulnerability, which could be exploited by the attacker. So back to our example here. So here there is a person called attacker has found this guy called John from LinkedIn and says that John works at a target company. Now what the attacker does is attacker sends John an email that will talk to the new finance process. So what this email contains is this trackers, okay, so which can actually send back all these information back to the attacker as to where the location is, what his engagement levels are, whether he has forwarded the email, what is the device or operating system that John has. So what it eventually does is this helps the attacker confirm John's role in finance department. And also he gets into a conclusion that he's a good target for the financial scam. So now what happens is the attacker now moves on to create the actual phishing email and will use the information that he gathered by the trackers. So crucially, like what he has discovered is that John is not working from London office, but instead he's on a business trip to San Francisco because he accessed his email from San Francisco. So what the attacker will do is he will mention that in the email, which adds an air of authenticity to it. And also John will be convinced by this email because only those people who are close to John knows that he's in a business trip to San Francisco. So now as a next step, what it does is it impersonates the CEO of the organization, Susan Smith, and is asking John to pay an invoice. Otherwise, he's saying that there will be a contract which will not, an invoice that he needs to pay. Otherwise, a person will not finish this work that is scheduled for the weekend. And also because it's a Friday evening, he's injecting or, sending these kind of, sense of urgency is being injected in this email. And also you can see that there are a few suspicious signs in the email headers and also in the text, but it may not be enough for an email security to be 100% sure or to be 100% confirmed that this is a business email compromise attack. So the chances of false positive are high because we don't have the telltales or no malicious attachments, no malicious URLs. There's nothing like harmful with this particular email. So the chances of false positive are high, and the implications for the business of the email for not actioning this particular email, if it was a genuine one, is also something which is severe. So the best option over here is to add a banner so that we could warn John about the risk that he is facing. So the challenge with the existing banners that we're using, so typically the external tags that we're using in our emails, is not conveying much information to help the user and to identify if there is anything malicious about it or not. So what we need is a better response, and a number of technologies have emerged to solve this point problem. So CyberGraph for your inbox. So what CyberGraph does is, by self-learning, the CyberGraph artificial intelligence, it improves its knowledge base to understand the cybersecurity threat landscape of an organization that it works in. And also it brings in a pattern of life or intelligence by having ingested or analyzed over 1 billion user data points. And also, no longer with CyberGraph, John needs to do a guesswork. So we can take that guesswork out, wherein CyberGraph will find the threats faster by analyzing the relationship, logic, and reasoning across the malicious injections, trackers, and actors instantly. And also, it is a tool that will help the IT teams which are already stretched, wherein it provides a user-friendly console that provides curated risk and vulnerable user analysis. So this will in turn help to reduce the time IT and SecOps are taking to make critical decisions and remediate or, with regards to the sophisticated or targeted threats. So it's definitely a powerful AI for emails for a lot many reasons. So firstly, like it analyzes the historic communications to identify the future anomalies. And also these machine learning algorithms that we're using, it gets stronger over the period of time. And what we are giving, like in the case of the example that we saw earlier, what we will be able to do is to give out clear visual indication to the users regarding the threat that they're facing, so that they could take an informed decision at the point of risk. And also this is something which will definitely empower the employees to make a real-time decision. Okay, and they have in place, or they have in front of us, the risk warnings that they are about to action. And also in today's world, because we all are following a hybrid work style, and also this is a solution that will support for any device, any operating systems, and any email client application. So you have the same experience. It doesn't matter which device you're accessing it from, cyber experience across different devices. Capabilities of CyberGraph. So what are the issues? Services, we address this problem at each and every stage of cyber kill chain process. So firstly, like we saw in the example of John's email, there was a tracker embedded in the email. So with the CyberGraph, what we're doing is we are completely disabling the trackers. So we are no longer sending back the information to the attacker. And also we have this layer of artificial intelligence, which will help to detect these kind of advanced targeted threats. And also we replace those static banners. So I'm sure you must be familiar with the external tags, which doesn't give out much information, but instead we replace it with this dynamic banners, the engaging ones, which is giving them reasons as to why they should not action or they should be cautious of this particular email. And also, finally, we help to alert the centers of potentially misaddressed email. Like, for example, it will give you a flag saying that, are you sure that you need to send this email to this person? So is it somebody else you're trying to send this email to? So those kind of warning banners can be also given by the CyberGraph solution. So now zooming into these core capabilities. So like I mentioned earlier, so we disable the trackers that are embedded in the emails. So this will prevent the trackers communicating the useful intelligence back to the attacker so that he could plan for a sophisticated or a more targeted attack. And also we can mask the recipient's location. So if John had an email, had CyberGraph in his environment, we should have blocked the information saying that he is now in San Francisco. So because we could mask the recipient's location. And also we could block the attempt to understand the engagement level. So we are not sending back the information as to whether John has kept this email open for, let's say, 10 minutes, or whether he has forwarded this particular email to his colleagues. And also we are blocking the intelligence gathering about the potential vulnerabilities. So we are not sending back the information to the attacker as to what is the operating system that John is using, whether it is an outdated one, whether the attacker can make use of it in case if it is not up to date. So here is a snapshot of the CyberGraph dashboard, which shows the physical location of every employee when they're trying to open email, which had trackers embedded in it. So what it does is it reports back on their device type and also on their operating system. So this, in fact, brings in a lot of benefits to the IT and cybersecurity teams as such, because you could actually report on which individuals are being targeted, and also you can inform these group of people and ensure that they are remaining vigilant, and also you can, in fact, like schedule an additional awareness training session for them to educate them. So saying that you are a target for the attacker and you need to be vigilant of these kind of activities that are around. And also another advantage as an IT is that you have the visibility of the device or OS version, which might contain vulnerabilities, so which could be possibly like exploited and which needs upgradation. So these are the information that you get in the backend with the CyberGraph dashboard. And also the second piece which we discussed regarding the core capability of CyberGraph, which is the use of artificial intelligence. So machine learning learns behaviors to create an identity graph database for each and every organization. So initially we put the solution into a monitor mode where it analyzes and learns about the organization. And in turn, what it does is it stores information about the relationship and connections between all the centers and recipients, including the strength or proximity of the relationship. And also it learns over the period of time about these behaviors with respect to what is normal, and what happens is eventually it has the ability, or it will gain the ability to detect anomalous behaviors that are indicative of a malicious email. Like for example, in your organization, if someone in finance is receiving an email from someone they have never communicated with before, which means that there is something which is suspicious. So CyberGraph will be able to detect that for you. And also we use other indicators of suspicion, such as sender's email address is using a recently registered domain. So that will be also something which will be picked by CyberGraph. So if we go back to our example of this business email compromise mail that John had received from the attacker. So John, with CyberGraph, what we could have detected is that John never normally receives this email from the email address which Susan had sent from, when compared to the previous email that he had received. So this email has to be treated with suspicion. So now what happens is with CyberGraph, a different type of banner is added and make that informed decision. So now in front of him, John is seeing as to why this particular email could be suspicious. Like the domain was created recently. This is their first email to your company. And also regarding this banner, so this is always displayed, like I mentioned earlier, regardless of the device type or email clients. So you have this experience even if you access it from your laptop or your mobile device. And also, as you see over here, the different color-coded banners, what we use indicates a different level of risk. And also, along with the banners, we are providing enough information about the potential issue that we identified without overburdening the user. So we are just giving them pointers as to why this particular email is suspicious. And also, you have an option to add 20 different banners of this type. Okay, and also you can customize the wording of each and every messages to tailor to the needs or to tailor to the technical knowledge level of your customers or your employees. So what it does is it engages and it helps the user at the point of risk when they are about to action the email. So if John had received this particular banner before or when he is opening that particular email, he could have definitely reported it. So as a next step, let's say he has received a malicious email and he is reporting, he has an option to mark it as safe, mark it as dangerous, or you can mark it as spam. So these are the options as a user John can receive. So the user is further empowered by having their view whether this particular email is malicious or not. And these reporting features, what it does is it feeds a machine learning model, and we update CyberGraph with these information about the trust relationship between the senders and recipients in an organization. And also with this information, what we do is we feed this into the Mimecast threat intel, and also this will help us to determine whether this email is malicious or not for future references. And another thing is that this is essentially crowdsourcing data about malicious emails. And also the example that I could think of is, let's say there are 100 users in an organization, and let's say these 100 users are targeted with a phishing campaign. So with these banners popped up, what it can happen is there are like cases where 10 people might report, and which means that this might be suspicious. It is not like a clear indication, but there is a few element of suspicion over there. But for the same attack, let's say all the 100 people are reporting it, which means that it is highly likely to be suspicious. So that's the message that we are giving. And also at this point, what we are doing is we are escalating to the MSOC for human analysis, or else if we have this intelligence in our database, we can automatically change the status into malicious. So in this case, let's say this this particular email was marked as dangerous and it is confirmed as something malicious. What happens is, next time the user is trying to open the same email, you can see that the banner has changed the color now. Okay, so it changed automatically, and we are able to do this because the banner is not embedded in the email itself. Instead, this banner, what you see over here, is a link that points at the banner. So what happens is every time we have the capability to change the banner at any time for any given delivered email, and each time the user is trying to open the email, it downloads the banner that are assigned to it. And it pops up, and you can see that the users will have the visibility to this banner. And another feature, what we discuss is regarding this misaddressed email protection. So it's a feature of CyberGraph product, which we recently joined, which we recently launched. And also this is designed to detect and prevent data leaks caused by incorrectly addressed emails. So the product, what it does is it uses social graphing to identify these kind of anomalous communication, and we alert to the potential mistakes regarding to the users. We send across alerts, and we hold the emails for the user, giving the users a chance to correct it and send it to the right recipient, or else release the flagged email if it is something genuine. A typical example would be Mohammed. Let's say someone is trying to send across an email to Mohammed Salik, but instead it is gone to, in the sent address it has gone to like Mohammed Siddiq. So many users face an issue when they send an email to a person with a similar looking name, but not to the intended person itself. So these simple messages can have like dire consequences of sensitive data, even data breaches, which fines and even like brand damage as such. And also we have this Outlook address autocomplete, which offers suggestions as to whom you should send a particular document. So CyberGraph addresses this issue by identifying these anomalous communication patterns and detects if a sender has addressed an email to someone that they do not communicate regularly with. So these emails will be held, and we will alert the user about this potential problem that we identified, so that the user has the ability to release the email, or it can be automatically released after the default time period that is set. So in short, CyberGraph is a solution that will help your organization to reduce the risk of a successful attack. So it blocks or disables the trackers, which usually the attackers are using these days in the reconnaissance phase of the cyber attack kill chain process, ultimately reducing the risk of success. And also it is the latest ML technology that we're using, and it is fully integrated with the secure email gateway solution that you're using to prevent the attacks ever reaching to the inbox. And also with the solution, users are engaged at the point of risk. Okay, so when they are opening that email, that's when they see these banners as to why this particular email is malicious. So when they're about to action an email and maybe fall for a business email scam, that's when CyberGraph comes into play. And finally, because CyberGraph is not rule-based, it requires very little configuration, allowing your team to focus on high priority tasks. So thank you. That's it from my side. Feel free to let me know if you are interested or if you have any questions on the product. So I'll be more than happy to support you. Thanks, team. Over to you, Sujata, for the next session.
Thanks for that, Gigi. That was definitely informative. Good morning, guys. Let me quickly share my screen and we can get started with our piece for today. I hope you guys are able to see my screen. Okay, great. Alrighty, perfect. Good morning, everybody. This is Sujata Narasimhan. I work as a sales engineer with Mimecast, and today we are going to see why DMARC is essential for online brand protection. Now, the more important thing over here for us to understand is why brand is important for every organization, right? So today nowadays, brand is the most important thing an organization relies upon, right? And that's because that's what they bank upon to build their businesses on and maintain their customer databases or take the businesses to the next level. And attackers realize this importance of a brand and leverage that to create attacks. And one such attack type or attack vector is where malicious actors make use of your exact domain that your organization uses, and they launch attacks to, targeting your customers, your vendors, and the likes of it, right? So what we're going to see today is how we can understand this problem better, what we can do to solve for it, and how we can solve for it, right? And to that extent, let's start off with understanding what a typical phishing attack looks like. Okay. Typically, an attacker would start off with the phishing attack by identifying who his target is. Once he's identified his target, he's going to now go ahead and create that phishing email, which is going to lure his victim in, right? And this would typically involve in some sort of getting some sort of credentials out, or updating some bank account details if he's looking for financial fraud. In our example, I'm looking at updating a new bank account details. Sounds familiar? I'm sure everybody has seen this bit, right? Now, to add that touch of authenticity is where he uses a trusted domain or your domain to send out this email. Fast forward to stage 3 is where the attacker now delivers these emails to his intended targets. And the target or the recipient, once receiving the mail, are going to trust that mail because it is coming in from a trusted brand or a trusted or a known organization. And hence, they go ahead, make that change to that bank account, update that account, make the transfer, resulting in a financial loss. So what do we get out of this whole scenario? The main important point over here is that we see these attacks only at stage 3, which is when the mail has landed at the user's mailbox, right? And more often than not, you would only see this if it is landed in your employee's mailbox, which is within your own organization. But what happens is they are now attacking your customers, your vendors, and your suppliers. So we don't even see these attacks happening. And the only time they report it is when the financial loss has already happened, or the victim has already succumbed to the bait laid out. So it is too late and the damage is done. So the key problem here is to try and identify or gain visibility towards who are these guys who are sending mails on behalf of your organization, right? And this is where the problem magnifies, because every organization today has a broad range of sources through where their mails would go out, right? And starting with their own users or your own employees, you would have your marketing systems, you would have your sales systems that would be sending mails on your behalf. And then in that whole haystack, you're trying to identify this one particular needle of the malicious actor who's trying to impersonate your brand, right? So how do we create that visibility, or how do we gain that visibility? Enter DMARC. Now, this is where DMARC, or domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance, a mouthful of it, I know, but is a system that actually gives you protection towards attacks that use your own domains to send across to your customers or your supply chain, right? And how does it do that? It checks to see if the mail is coming in from an authorized source. Okay, now let's understand this a little better to understand how this works. So DMARC itself is a protocol. What it works on and the underneath is two authentication mechanisms. So it uses something called as an SPF, a Sender Policy Framework, and a DKIM, which is Domain Keys Identified Mail. SPF is a list of all your authorized sources that is allowed to send mails on your behalf, whereas DKIM is a newer technique which uses key encryption to serve this authentication mechanism. So any mail that is DKIM signed essentially means has not been tampered with, and hence is a genuine mail that is to be received by the recipient, right? Now, DMARC relies on these two together because when a mail has to be sent out, you involve both the owner of the domain as well as the sender to ensure you're meeting with SPF and DKIM compliance. And that is not possible when an attacker is trying to send out mails, and hence DMARC is effective, right? So with that is what you try and bring in control and ensure that you have control over your domain about who's supposed to send mails on your behalf. Now, how do we start by setting this up? It's very simple. All you need to do is go ahead and update a DNS record or a text record, which is what we call DMARC record, which says, this is the DMARC version, which has remained constant ever since it's been launched, which is version 1. You update the policy status saying, are you in a monitoring phase? Are you going to start rejecting mails? Or are you going to hold or quarantine mails where they fail DMARC checks? And finally, you mentioned these two RUA and RUF parameters, which is the critical part of DMARC. This is where you say, these are the email addresses that you send out these DMARC reports to. And these reports contain valuable information, which contains the metadata of the sender source, the authentication, and the delivery results. And this is what helps us pick out and say who is legitimate and who's a fraudulent sender. All right, now once you've updated this DMARC record, you also need to understand what this policy phase is. So let's understand that a little better. Now, when I say you set this record up, again, it's all about setting up a text record. So you go ahead and say what policy level you want to start off with. When you start a DMARC journey, you start off with this policy as none or monitoring phase. This is where you start getting that visibility. You start seeing who are these guys who are sending mails, and then it's up to you to classify and say who's a legitimate source and who's a fraudulent source. Once you've done that activity and you know all your legitimate sources are configured correctly, you now start moving into what we call the quarantine phase. And once you move to a quarantine phase, you are now in a position to start moving those mails that are failing DMARC into the junk or spam folders of the recipient, right? So that's your first stage of control that you receive. And once you've identified and ensured that everything is set up right, you are now able to move to the recheck phase, where any mail that fails DMARC is bounced directly, right? So once this is done is where you have that complete control in terms of only your legitimate sources sending mails on your behalf. So in essence, when you set up DMARC, you have visibility towards who is supposed to be legitimately spoofing you. Once you identify them, you whitelist those sources. And once you've whitelisted those sources, we automatically start rejecting the sources that are not supposed to be sending mails on your behalf, right? Now, why do you need DMARC Analyzer or Mimecast DMARC Analyzer to do with this? All we've spoken about right now is updating a DNS record or a text record on your DNS, which is going to achieve this thing for you, right? But the problem or the core problem here is when you're looking at those DMARC reports, so these are XML reports that are generated, and you would receive thousands of these reports, and you'll have to go through them one by one to analyze and see and classify what those sources are. Right? With DMARC Analyzer, we absorb all those reports and present the data to you in a format where you are directly able to categorize who's a legitimate source, illegitimate source, and helps you move forward with your DMARC journey confidently, so that you know no legitimate sources would be rejected once you get into a DMARC reject phase, right? Now, in addition to this, Mimecast helps organizations tackle this whole domain spoofing, both as an email sender and as an email receiver. Now, why do I say this? On the inbound route, the Mimecast email gateway, along with the targeted threat protection, is already detecting these imposter mails or impersonation mails, right? Whereas the DMARC enforcement also ensures that you are able to now distinguish between these legitimate and fraudulent senders. And anyone that's recognized as a fraudulent sender is now put under quarantine or reject status. And at the same time, on your outbound route or as an email sender, you now have complete visibility and control to protect your employees, your customers, and your supply chain in terms of protecting them from these phishing mails that are being sent out on behalf of your organization, right? So to summarize the whole solution over here, we are talking about without DMARC protection, everybody can use your domain, right? There's no visibility on what's happening on your outbound environment. And this puts your employees, your partners, your third parties, your consumers at risk. And with risk comes financial loss, data loss, and ultimately damage to your own brand and reputation, right? So with DMARC, you are now under full control with complete visibility over your outbound channel. You can determine who can use your domains. You create a safe environment for your supply chain and your vendors and your consumers, and hence mitigate that risk of financial loss and protect your brand and domain reputation, right? So that is what the whole DMARC analyzer does. And that's why we call this as that one-stop solution to online brand protection when these mails are emerging from your own organization or from your own domain. With that, I'd like to end my presentation. Any questions, please put them on the chat and we're happy to take them on from there on.
Doesn't look like there's any questions. There was just one question regarding to Mesh, which I've already answered in the Q&A. Basically, it was just, would the integration be at the back end, or will we have to use the integration capability and implement this for the customer? And I just basically answered back saying that the Mesh is on MimOS and customers can access this via the administration console. All right, guys, seeing as there's no questions, I think we can conclude the webinar.
On behalf of Mimecast and Bulwark, I would like to thank you all for attending this webinar on how to manage risk and reduce the attack surface with Mimecast. As you have heard from the team, with the new Mimecast X1 platform, CyberGraph DMARC, we are helping organizations to safely manage their email and business communications in most effective way. With that, I would like to conclude this webinar and hope the session was interesting to you.